So is this report of Israeli bullets found in Iranian children a lie to deflect blame and legitimize this terrible action against dissent? Or does it expose something much darker, a foreign intel attempt at turning anger into armed insurgency regardless of the human cost? Joining us now, editor of the Grayzone News, Max Blumenthal. Max, I was skeptical when I saw these claims that Israeli bullets were found in Iranian children. What do you make of the report?
Well, whether an Israeli bullet was found or not, there are also reports of Soviet-era bullets that have never been used in the Iranian military before. And more than that, you have Israel's Mossad on its official Farsi Twitter X channel telling Iranians at the onset of these protests, before they morphed into violent regime change riots, that they were walking alongside them, that there were Mossad assets in the protests. This was also repeated by former CIA director and ex-Secretary of State Mike Pompeo, who said Mossad agents are walking beside you to Iranian protesters. And it was repeated on Israel's Channel 14, a pro-Netanyahu channel, by the Israeli correspondent Tamir Morag, who said that not only are Mossad agents active, but they are funneling weapons into these riots and are responsible, in his words, for the many body bags that are piling up in Iranian morgues. And
so what's the evidence of that, Max? Like, what is the evidence you've reviewed that Mossad agents who, you're right, I mean, a lot of people have been suggesting they were out there involved, were increasing the violence and the acuity of death?
Well, the evidence is that they've said so, that they would like to take credit, or at least partial credit, for this. There are other groups that are backed by Western intelligence and the Israelis, like the Kurdish PJAK separatists, PJAK, who were actively engaged in armed battles against Iranian security forces in the city of Kermanshah, where many were killed. There were armed battles in the city of Mashhad, Iran's second largest city, where $20 million of damage took place. We've seen the burning in Iran and destruction of something like 700 banks, 250 mosques, much of this captured on camera, and the beating to death by mobs, including armed mobs, of Basij guards who are unarmed youth supporters of the Islamic Republic usually, as well as the murder of seminary students, the killing of civilians, and possibly hundreds of police officers. That's according to both opposition and Islamic Republic sources. So what would the United States do if hundreds of police officers were killed with rioters? I don't think it would be pretty for those rioters, particularly with the rhetoric we hear from Donald Trump against Antifa. But these are foreign intelligence services that are involved here. We also had Reza Pahlavi, who is the so-called crown prince of Iran. He's based here in Potomac, Maryland, in a mansion.
You're right.
And he is backed by Israel explicitly. He went to Israel and kissed the wall. He's friends with Netanyahu. He called for Iranians to go out and kill government workers, to kill state media journalists. Then you have the People's MEK, which is an armed group that has been based under U.S. protection in Albania, that has cells inside Iran, that has taken credit for a lot of this violence. So I think it's very clear. And so we have to ask why. Why did these protests turn violent? And what is the agenda here? What is Israel's agenda? What is Pahlavi's agenda? The agenda is to get Trump to bomb Iran and force and manipulate Trump and the United States into a conflict from which they cannot extricate themselves, which will be financially ruinous for the global economy.
Yeah, we have a lot of members of the MEK on this program to make their case, and we press them on their claims that, like, this is the moment when the regime is going to fall. It has, at times, like a boy that cries wolf energy to it, which is why we want to hear them out and why we want to press them on those questions. You talk about the goal here, and that's what I want to get to now, because I'm really trying to figure out what chapter of the movie we're in. Obviously, the objective of Prime Minister Netanyahu was to have corresponding riots in the streets and U.S. airstrikes in Tehran. And that did not happen. So where does Bibi go now?
Well, they now have a U.S. carrier group entering the region, entering the Persian Gulf. I don't believe Israel's anti-missile defenses were ready during last week's National Security Council meeting at the White House. And so they may have wanted to delay this. But Israel's intelligence services, along with other foreign malicious actors, including the Crown Prince and other forces.
It's such a joke. I'm sorry. Yeah. I can't even with the Crown Prince thing. Like, this is just the son of some corrupt dude that we put in charge of the country that got run out, that would never be accepted. Like the fever dream that Reza is going to go back and run Iran is just not something that I can even indulge with the Crown Prince label.
It's utterly laughable. He's never worked a day in his life. He left Iran with millions in stolen money. Now he's backed by the Israelis and I assume some of the Gulf states. Trump even knows he can't run the country.
Nobody in the Gulf states is that dumb. Nobody, like, why not just back Aladdin to go run Iran? I don't think anyone's that dumb in the Gulf states. But.
Well, they don't have an opposition inside Iran to just come in and replace the Islamic Republic, just as they didn't have Maria Corina Machado in Venezuela ready to take over all of the institutions of the Venezuelan state. So they went for a non-regime change option in Venezuela.
But that's the new thing, Max. I mean, you've covered me, you've covered my record in Congress. I'm not some neoconservative, but I think what you're seeing in like the Trump-Vance-Rubio doctrine here is not to change the regime, but just to change someone in it and to try to incrementally improve conditions as a consequence of that. I'm way more skeptical of that in the Middle East than I am in our own backyard in the Americas. But do you think that's what Bibi is hoping for, that we do the Maduro thing in Iran?
At this point, Trump has been tricked into playing the Israelis' game or incentivized into it by Miriam Adelson, promising that help is on the way.
I'm sorry, he didn't do it.
Let me make my case, which is he promised help was on the way when he wasn't prepared to launch airstrikes. This increased the death toll. It accelerated the rioting. Pahlavi told his followers after Trump said that the final days of the Islamic Republic are here. And now that Trump is pulled back, Pahlavi is on TV along with all the Israeli cutouts in Washington demanding airstrikes because their internal forces can't do it on its own. And here's another point, something that I observed inside Iran. Reform was already quietly taking place. Women were taking off hijab and it wasn't being enforced. And going back to 75% participation in, I believe, the 2015 Iran election in which a reformist was elected, people were voting for diplomacy with the U.S. And what did Trump do? He blew that up. Scott Bessent at Davos said that U.S. sanctions are what was responsible for these riots, and he took credit for it. That's going to lead to a rally around the flag effect, more nationalism, and it's going to weaken the drive for reform inside Iran. As soon as Trump pulls back from this Israeli agenda, you're going to see change inside Iran, but he is playing the Israelis' game. And what does Netanyahu want? He actually wants U.S. casualties. He wants the U.S. to be bogged down in a conflict, and then the U.S. will be forced to focus on that region instead of, for example, China or Ukraine. Netanyahu wants to keep the U.S. focused on his main enemy.
Yeah, I think Netanyahu wants the Middle East awash in war refugees so that there are not rising capital markets in places that aren't New York and London. But the allegation that Trump is just sort of awaiting the moment when Netanyahu says do it is one that I think is misplaced. Here, I think Trump understood that strikes in Tehran weren't going to decapitate the regime. And so they would be strikes sort of with no end and also with no clear victory. And that was what Trump wasn't willing to endure. If there's a presentation that there's indeed some sort of successful regime change without widespread chaos in the Middle East, who knows what the president would do. But I think there's a different weight being applied than just the readiness of Israelis' defenses. But I appreciate you debating with me. Thanks for coming on. Max Blumenthal, editor at the Grayzone News.
Matt, I hope you're right. Thanks.
Thank you.